Ho ho ho, Merry Christmas. Can I review 4 manga in one video? Of course I can. Case Closed, Volume 17. I think this is the one that has the mature plot line that one of my commenters mentioned, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. So I would still say, hey, older kids with parental guidance, murder mysteries. So that's Case Closed. You can't really review it because you'd spoil everything. Speaking of which, Mushishi is fantastic and it's completely unreviewable. I feel like I reviewed Volume 1 ages ago, but I read Mushishi years ago, so I guess I haven't just been grabbing it up as much since I've read it before and really enjoyed it. But every time I come back to it, it's so good. And I actually don't think I got to read Volume 2 before. I think the library at my old home had a bunch of volumes, but they were missing a couple because there were some really standout stories in this one. The appeal of Mushi, I think, is these are some of the best horror stories I've ever seen in that they don't just like have a monster come out and rip someone's arm off, right? Oh, there's blood and guts everywhere. No, all of them give you kind of like this deep, tense, like feeling inside because it mixes like the biological with like the fear of death and the immortal and the invisible and the unknown. Basically, I think that Yuki Urushibara just looks for inspiration in nature and in the human psyche to kind of craft these narratives where every horror or every mushi, some of them are good and some of them are evil or they're amoral. Some of them are just like primal life forces that can either help or hurt. I love the art style and how it's kind of like scratchy and sketchy, but then something will come up where he'll do like a whole bunch of. I want to find this one page where he just shows like a whole bunch of life forms. So that's a pretty cool page where he's got like tree life and it's all a bunch of dots. This one, good grief. So like he's taking inspiration from like snake scales and plant life and molecular biology and fish and trees and neural synapses, and it just gets in your head. There was even like a fun little moment that's fun to take out of context because it's so ridiculous, but I can't even show that because it would spoil a plot. So if you want to learn to write good horror stories, get Mushishi. I will say sometimes I'll be like questioning like, what? Did the girl ever die? I don't understand what's happening. But throughout, I'm always deeply disturbed and kind of in awe of how strange and kind of magical. That's what it is. It has a great sense of the magical. It's not like, oh, the aliens created the zombie virus. No, it's getting at kind of like a really old idea of the spiritual world as a real thing that is beautiful and there's lots of opportunity there, but it's also terrifying and too beyond human being. It's sort of like what would the plague be like to people who didn't know what germs is? The plague would seem like this curse from God that just would devastate whole villages. That's the kind of terror that Mushishi taps into. It's a masterpiece. All right. Haru, right. The scent of air after rain in the light around us. I felt your heartbeat. Volume 3. What am I reading? This is still the girliest manga I've ever read. And it's still one of the better shoujo I've ever read because like the danger of any shoujo is it's going to be like 20 volumes of the girl batting her eyes at the pretty handsome boy. Will he notice me? He's so dreamy. Will he notice me? And what Haru Rai does that I like is it has the theme of be true to yourself and tell people the truth. Don't expect people to read your mind. And I kind of like that they're like, obviously because it's so girly, one of the things that's different is like saying, really? Is that what it's like from the girl's perspective? So there's a sweet moment where she is completely unsure. She's a basket case of emotions. Her friend likes the same boy she does. So she has the she kind of tells the guy like, you go on home. I'm going to get something. And he waits for her. And she thinks, oh, well, is he waiting for me? I don't know. Is that's so sweet of him. Why is he waiting for me and walking me home? So she has this bright idea that if he gets off the train and waits for me, I will go for it. If he stays on the train and leaves me behind, I'll take that as a sign that I won't go for it. And I was just like, are you kidding me? This is the girliest thing ever. And then he gets off the train, and then she's like, oh, crap, I didn't have an excuse for this. So the comedy comes from her, like, kind of being an immature girl and not always being direct or truthful. And then basically, Ko is bright enough that he can call her out on her BS. And this intrigues her because he doesn't like, He doesn't have any patience for her immaturity. And so this kind of like prompts her to kind of like be self-reflective and try to like tell the truth and be more honest with herself. So I'm going to keep reading it as long as I enjoy it. Girliest thing ever, but I'm still enjoying the psychological aspect of it. All right, so Volume 1 of Delicious in Dungeon by Ryoko Kui. I'm going to talk about this one a little bit more. So this is obviously like DnD. This is like a DnD inspired book. They don't show like the people, the nerds around the table playing it. It kind of like pretends that the world of the D&D campaign is a real world. Right? I almost like it better when they cut away and show the people playing D&D, because then I can start like getting to know the characters who are playing the parts of the fantasy. I cast magic missile at the darkness. So my history with D&D is my mom thought it was satanic because that was the thing back in the late 80s, early 90s. Everyone thought D&D was of the devil. I had some friends who played it, but I just never got into it. And later I kind of regretted that, because then I'd start watching like D&D videos on YouTube, and I'd play, like Japanese role-playing games. I'd think, gee, it'd be maybe kind of fun to play this, but it seems like you gotta know like a super nerd to play D&D. And then I'd like... and then I'll like watch some of these D&D YouTube channel videos, and I'd say, no, this is too nerdy for me. Like I will read Lord of the Rings level nerd. I'm sorry, D&D nerds. I want to stuff you guys' heads in the toilet when I hear you talking about, I cast roll for initiative to see if what is this franchise? What is this game? Anyway, so even though, I'm not a D&D fan, I'm not going to pretend I am, but I have read some comics that are clearly inspired by D&D. And they're kind of hit and miss for me, because I always think it's not J.R.R. Tolkien. And the last one I read like that was Rat Queens, which everybody says was kind of like the good SJW book with a D&D inspiration. And I just couldn't get the mental image out of my head of 5 40-year-old Hillary Clinton voters playing D&D. And that basically like spoiled immersion for me in Rat Queens, because it was supposed to be a realistic fantasy, but oh look, there's a party of all Daves. Everyone in the party is named Dave, and there's an orc who's nice, and orcs are mean in Tolkien, but here he's not. I couldn't stand it. I eventually gave up reading it and just looked at the pretty pictures in Rat Queens. So Delicious in Dungeon, I don't know about it, but I was entertained, and my rule is, as long as I'm entertained, I'm going to keep reading. So Delicious in Dungeon has a meta gag to the entire thing, which is, what if the adventurers ate the monsters and cooked them up all nice and didn't just like eat them, but like made beautiful, elegant dishes out of them. And what I think this is parodying is, I think there's like a subgenre of Japanese artists who just like drawing food. Like their whole Twitter account set up for this. I think Black Butler does a little of this, where they'll just show the elegant English dishes. So the joke of this is, it's like a food Pr0n book showing you all these beautiful pictures of food, but they're disgusting, evil, horrible monsters that are being cooked. There's also a nice little character arc thing going on, where the paladin is kind of a nerd who loves zoology, and he loves these animals. He loves studying them. He loves researching them and learning about them, and hunting them, killing them, and eating them. For him, it's kind of like a way of respecting them. It's like when the hunter goes after his prey and he understands the prey and he kills the prey and cooks it and eats it himself. He's more romantically attached to his meal than if he just went out and got a TV dinner. But he's also kind of creepy. Like, he seems to be a little too obsessed with monsters. So the setup is, his sister gets eaten by a dragon. If they can save her before she's digested, they can resurrect her, because it's D&D. But after a month, she's gone forever. So this kind of creates the problem where, well, they've got to get her fast. They don't have time to raise supplies to get a bunch of food. So time is of the essence. Let's eat monsters. But secretly, he's been wanting to eat monsters this whole time. The elf cleric girl, I like that she's kind of like a girly girl, where she wants to go save her too, and she's like really gung-ho about saving her. But then at the second like gross monsters show up, it's hilarious because she's always freaking out. Oh, a bug! I can't eat a bug! So that's just like an endless source of comedy. There's like a hobbit who's here too, but they don't call him a hobbit, they call him a half-foot, because it's not J.R.R. Tolkien. And I kind of dig this guy, because the paladin wants to cook animals, but he doesn't, and monsters, but he doesn't know too much about it apart from book knowledge. And then they meet like this crazy survivalist dwarf who just has cooked and ate monsters all his life, and he's like a crazy barbarian type, really direct, but he's also like a fancy gourmand. That's the joke. Now, is that enough of a joke to get like 8 volumes worth of manga out of? I don't know. But I got a kick out of it, and I want to talk actually about an OCD moment I had in the start. So they gave you the setup of like, oh, the king said there's treasure there, and you can go get the treasure, right? And then it cuts right to them fighting the dragon. They're experienced fighters. Now, here's where the confusion happens. So there's some internal monologuing. We couldn't be more prepared for this. We have no vulnerabilities, right? So I'm thinking, okay, one of them is talking, and it says, I'm hungry. Now, who's thinking I'm hungry? Well, the most prominent person in this is the dwarf monk girl. Now, what I was supposed to do was I was supposed to connect I'm hungry with the paladin because he's making the doofy face, but she's the most prominent one. So I thought, okay, dwarf monk girl, she's the one having this internal monologue, and then look at these panels. There's dwarf monk girl, waifu about to get in trouble. There's dwarf monk waifu about getting blown up. There's dwarf monk waifu in trouble, right? So everything about this page is saying dwarf monk waifu is important. And then they flash forward, and they two of the party members leave, including her. She's not an important character. So what I would have done is I only would have had the main cast be featured prominently in these first few pages, and I just like the thought balloon because the thought balloon points to the guy who's thinking, and we don't have this problem. So rest in peace, dwarf waifu. I'm sorry you aren't actually a character. Maybe she will be in a future volume. They're just teasing me, but and then it's exactly what it is. Every chapter is kind of like them hunting a monster, them figuring out how to beat it, and then them figuring out how to cook it and serve it properly. So if you would find it amusing to read a D&D book that is also a food Pr0n parody, I guess you'll get a kick out of Delition in Dungeon. I will keep reading it as long as I find it entertaining. So we'll see if Ryoko Kui can stretch a whole series out of this. Rest in peace, dwarf monk waifu girl. You will be missed. I'm number one Marmaduke fan. Merry Christmas. I love you guys. Catch you later.